Greetings, family. Rahobat, everyone, and welcome to another question and answer class via live Facebook. This is going to be a very short class today. So now that we're going live, what you can do is you can type in your comments or questions into the live feed, or you can type in where it says invite to invite yourself to the live. So if you want to invite yourself so that you can ask the question, so that you can be heard, you can also just click that you want to be invited so you can ask the question. All right. Okay. So today we're going to be building from Neuroscience of Wunuwap. Okay. So what we'll start off with is just to build about how neuroscience relates to the practical use of us as far as cleaning ourselves inside out and outside in. Okay. So before we start, I want to start off with prayer in our language, in our Sabaic language. Okay. So the first thing we do is begin all prayers and thinking as a part of the all. Anuki Jawef Pa Ashuk and Pa Palut. Mukalef Ashuk Kawan Jawef Naya. Anuki Kasamwan and Pa Palut. Upa Palut Kawan Kasamwan and Naya. Anuki Wahu Amet Pa Palut. Upa Palut Kawan Wahu Amet Naya. Nakuk Kador Naju Amet Kasamwan and Pa Palut. Wu Chabub Amet Mushkasa. Nakuk Kador Kawan Kale Pafef Nakuk Dayor Jawef Pa Palut. Ameh wase ameh dayarni kawun lake bakoy jawef pa paut. Anuki yebet bi nefashni pa paut kawun anuki pa paut kador nakuk kador pa paut amul nakuk amul. Okay. All right. So, do we have any questions so far?
No questions so far.
Okay, so what we'll do is we're going to begin off with Neuroscience of Wunuwap, so we can stimulate and raise your intellect. Okay? So this is called the Neuroscience of Wunuwap. For you all children of the omniverse, of the multiverses, of the triverses, of the dual verses of this universe, the universal reality, Nawapu, Musbatu, savings. This is what gives this universe of nature life, form, breath, cells, atoms, and order. It is in fact universal ether, natural ether, unity with the rules and cycles of existences. Universal ether is in the blood inside the bone. The life is in the blood as the marrow in the bone that reproduces new fresh blood to feed your life body. So as we go, what we're going to do is, if you have any questions as far as while we're reading, you can just type it into the comments and we'll go ahead and answer them, okay? So it says here, it takes 6 to 9 weeks to replenish your blood by way of the marrow inside the bone. Women are like the bone marrow that replenishes the blood inside the body, which the life is born and it takes 6 to 9 months. Man is like the blood that is grown inside the bone, that is grown inside the womb, and that being the body or bone. So they teach biblically that women are from the rib bone. So you have to understand that in the religious schools of thought, when you deal with Christianity, when you deal with Mosesism, when you deal with Judaism, they've always coined the term of the first man and woman on the planet, and they relate it to Adam and Eve. Okay, but we have the right knowledge to break down as far as the relationship between the blood and the life that is inside of the blood. The Sumerians gave the Chaldeans their Bible. So when you talk about Adam and Eve, you have to understand that this story has an older version. And that older version was first on the Sumerian stone tablets. So it says the Sumerians gave the Chaldeans their Bible, and who gave the Arabs their Quran. Okay, said Eve or Hawa or Hawa. So when you look at it in English, for instance, in the Bible, you'll see the word Eve But in Hebrew, you'll see the word Hawa or Hawa. So there is an older name as well as an older story and how that is broken down. So you have here, Eve or Hawa was called Ava or Titi. So when you hear that word Ava is where you get the word Eve. And Titi, when we break it down, you have the word T for the word rib and T for the word seed. So you see from where the Hebrew Bible says that Eve was the mother of all living, Genesis 3 verse 20, and Adam called his wife's name Eve because she was the mother of all living. Women is dealing with the bone. So when you talk about Titi or Eve, she's representative of the bone marrow. That's where the blood is actually being reproduced. Women is the bone and man is the blood inside. So you hear the word blood. When you hear that word blood in our language, Sabbaic, you get the word damam. Damam, where you get the word Adam. Adam. And Sumerians called her Tiamat, the consort of Adamu of the blood. So you can even see it in Hebrew, the word dam. Damam, blood, breath or life. Lifeblood, earthling, earth seed, blood, red, ruddy. There were many Adams, Edom, all the same root letters, or in Arabic, dam. And it means earth beings, ruddy, red, rose, pink, blood. So this is talking about a description of these Adamites and a description of these Evites, these tribes of people. No matter whom, they all have physical brains. Like the liver, the brain can create new neural pathways. So one thing that our master teacher, Baba Yanun, Dr. Malachi Z. York, has always taught us is to study our body. Once we develop enough knowledge, enough right knowledge about how our systems work, how our brain works, how our organs work, we'll be able to master the neuroscience of ourselves. So what is neuroscience and neurogenesis? The process of neurogenesis is the ability of the brain to grow new neurons. Neurons are electrically excitable cells that processes and transmits information by electrical and chemical signaling. The brain is constantly undergoing its own stem cell therapy through the process of neurogenesis. So in our way of life, in our culture, Wusabat, our animism, we always make a connection to our ancestors. So the ancestors are the life that is in your blood. You can see that connection. Every moment of your life, new neurons are growing from stem cells. So for 6,000 years, we've been under a spell of religion. We've been under a spell of sleep. So the religious doctrine, what they've taught to our people is to believe in a spook God, to believe in spook ancestors. And so our brain's capacity to change and our brain's capacity to evolve and grow has been limited based off of these lower mysteries or these religious doctrines or dogmas that prevent us from growing inside out and outside in and cleaning ourselves inside out and outside in and directing our energies to the wrong source. So people who are still praying to God, people who are still praying to Allah, Jah, Yahweh, or Theos, they're directing their energy, their life force, to an entity that they've never confirmed. Yet Wusabat is here to break that spell and to redirect that energy to your own ancestors, to your own family bloodline, your own genes, your own genealogy. Human beings, indeed, have the ability to grow new brain neurons. All organs cannot regenerate. So I'm going to stop right there. Are there any questions so far in the comments?
At this time, we don't have any questions.
Okay.
But we got quite a number of people watching. Family, if y'all have any questions, feel free to type them in.
Right. Okay, so we're going to keep on building, all right? So the brain acts like a holographic computer charged battery with many cells grouped, and your memory is stored in a higher drive called mental. So there is a difference between the brain and the mind. When you deal with the mind, you're dealing with an instrument that is connected to the mental reservoir, and your brain acts like a computer that processes all of that information. And you retrieve them. So you have here, like a computer, your link is your etheric cord or code. All right. Does everybody know as far as the difference? Does everybody know the difference between your etheric cord, all right, and your brain and the connection? So we can try to get certain questions to come. You have an etheric cord. Does everyone know what your etheric cord is? So your etheric cord can be tapped into and even given a virus called insanity, or as they say, out of your mind. So remember that religion was that virus. Religion was that virus that was a religious chip that was programmed into our mentalities. That is receiving thoughts from outside that can make you do things not you. Your brain as a computer also can crash down and you are in a coma state until rebooted. Others try to put their chips into your mind all the time, such as their religious chip or how they think, talk, act, or even look chips. It's called being programmed. So now you have to look at as far as how our people are acting today, how our people are conditioned. What is really going on in the world today? You have so many different programs, so many different chips, so many different ideas and thoughts that are not related, right, to an original race's genetic code. Okay? And these thoughts, these ideas are foreign, and our people are being infested and are being plagued by these religious and dogmatic realms of information. So you're dealing with the TV, the cinema, the plays, the books, the public schools, churches, and mosques are all chips in a great matrix trying to erase what you are and remake you into who they want you to be or to live in their image and their likeness. By this, they are safe from you, and you will contribute to their causes. So now think about all the different stores that you go to. Think about where you are buying your clothes. Think of all of the things that relate to what you do on a daily basis and how each one is a suggestion coming from an outside source. It says, so they must deaden your own inner programs from birth. Okay, so now, when you deal with animism, animism is a Latin word that comes from the word anima, which deals with the soul. So animism was there before birth, and animism will be there after when you die. Okay, and that's all related to your natural nature. So it says here, so they must deaden your own inner programs from birth. So we have a genetic code. We have our own culture, we have our own language, and that's what constitutes our own way of life, our own program called Wu Sabat that can break their spell or dispel all the lies and deceptions that they've taught to our people. Okay, so I've heard that there's one question. Let's go for the first question.
This is a question by Brother Hugh Kareem. His question is your etheric cord physical, and where is it located?
Okay, so now, the etheric cord, right, when you hear that word ether or etheric, it's not something that is physical. All right, so the best way to kind of really look at it in terms of the umbilical cord, when you see a mother that first gives birth to a baby, right, the baby is first being detached from its source, okay, and that umbilical cord, whether it is clipped or whether it falls off, that umbilical cord provides a sense of nourishment from the mother to the child, the life force. Okay? So the same way your etheric cord is connected to you, that's dealing with your connection between the physical world and the spiritual world. So when you go to sleep, all right, when you go to sleep, your etheric cord is still attached. So when people dream, all right, and they always say that dreams are a sister to death. So when people dream, it's the etheric cord that allows people to go from that dream state or from that dream world and to come back into the physical or to wake up. So when a person dies, their etheric cord is cut the same way a child or a baby is cut from the mother. So you are cut from in terms of this physical place or this physical realm. Okay? All right, so I see that there's another question. We can go to the next question.
All right, this is a question from Eric Jones. This question is, could you make the link between your etheric cord, your mind, and the oversoul?
Well, all of that is connected. All of that is connected when you deal with the mind and you're dealing with, first of all, ether is dealing with the mind. So what Baba Yanun has taught us is that we are 9 ether beings. So when you hear that word ether, you're dealing with something that is lighter than a gas. Ether is what fills space. Ether is the substance that fills all space. So when you deal with 9 ether, you're dealing with the combination of all existing gases in nature. And that's what we as people, as Africans, as Negroids, that's what we are composed of. So 9 ether also deals with the state of positivity. the state of you regrowing yourself inside out and outside in. So 9 ether will still remain when you are born and when you have died or when you have transitioned. Okay? But all of that is according to what you do in your present life. It means in terms of your actions, in terms of your intentions, the things that you do, you can either deaden or weaken the 9 ether, all right, or that life force that is inside of your being, according to what you eat, according to what you intake, and the things that you can consume. So yes.
And to piggyback off of that, the brother asked, is that also being utilized when you meditate? I'm guessing he's asking about the etheric cord. Mm-hmm. Is that also being utilized when you meditate?
When you meditate, yeah. So there's different ways. So when you deal with, you have to go to the actual fact, right? Feeding the forces. All right. When you go into feeding the forces, I'm going to read a little bit here, because meditation and chanting, all of those things assist you. Okay, so we can keep going real quick here. All right, I'm going to keep going to this part here. So it says here, do you realize this? In this regard, it is important to understand that the worship and feeding of our ancestors is a central component of our way of life. So when you deal with your ancestors, when you deal with your relatives, the people that stem from your own genetics, your genealogy, they are connected to your etheric core. All right, they're also considered to be the 30 spirits or the 30 ancestors that whisper certain suggestions or the inner voices inside of your own being. All right, so the feeding and worship of our ancestors has always been our component way of life. So the etheric core is being strengthened when you speak your own language, Ms. Baptiste. When you're eating healthier foods, your etheric core is being strengthened. When you're meditating, your etheric core is being strengthened. The connection between you and your ancestors is becoming stronger. Okay? So, not flesh or blood of dead animals. That is what lower forces seek, not us in their ritual practices. So now note, from above, the basic understanding down to understanding of life, death, living, feeding the forces is reversed to the norm. So what they've taught about life, they've always explained life in terms of the realm of birth or the birthing process. So it says you are born only to age and die. So there's a time that is being set. However, from above, you are dead or living as a soul. So a person who is truly alive is living from the soul, the Baha, only to be born or die as a spirit. So the spirit and the soul have a connection with each other. So once the soul and spirit comes in the process of someone being born, it says it weakens and weakens to be born into flesh and blood of the physical plane regarded as death. So this plane that we exist on, this physical plane that we're existing on, is dealing with a slow rate of vibration. It is not considered to be something that is alive and active. All right? So it says here, it is a reduction to a realm wherein the individual's main purpose is to serve the needs of the wanting flesh. Through taking, destroying, killing, which in some ways, to some things, is a form of suffering. So think about all the different death and killings that is happening right now. Think about all the different police brutality and murders that's happening in just on this planet, that's taking place on this planet. You have people losing their minds based off of all this negativity and chaos. So with Wu Sabat and our culture, it's to protect your mind. Okay? And it is to bring you closer to your own ancestors and to also acknowledge who the master teacher is in this day and time, Baba Yanun, Dr. Malachi Z. Kawa. And on that note, we can go to the next question.
Next question is from Elijah Davis. He asks, does diet have anything to do with breaking the spell and getting back in tune with the ancestors?
Well, diet is an aspect of you healing yourself. Now, as far as breaking the spell, no. When you deal with breaking the spell, deals with learning right knowledge. Learning right knowledge, studying the scrolls, understanding the teachings of Wu Sabat. That's what's going to break the spell. But it also depends upon a person's genetics, because this is a genetic doctrine. So Baba Yanun, the master teacher, is the one that is sent, that is incarnated to us in order to break the spell upon us. So we have enough right knowledge to answer enough questions to break the spell on the minds of our people.
All right. This is a question from Atum Asaru Sakim. He says, Rahubat, has Baba Yanun said anything about a person who dreams all the time?
About a person who dreams all the time? I have not really seen as far as a person who dreams all the time. There is a class that Baba Yanun, Dr. Malachi K. York, it's called Who Knows the Secrets? It's called Who Knows the Secrets? And in that class, he does talk about as far as the dream state and what happens to people as far as the dream state. So it's a little bit of an excerpt on that.
Okay. This is a question from Silos Congas. He says, is ether also a form of energy that can be directed to a focal point?
Yes, ether is a form of energy, and that deals with brain concentration. So when you go into the Master Secrets, there's one called the Dimensional Links. First of all, ether, you're dealing with the mind, you're dealing with thought. So yes, thought concentration is a way of you reasoning. So reasoning deals with you bringing those energies of your mind and concentrating on one particular thing for an extended period of time.
Okay. This is a question from good brother Kedar Yanan. He asks, what happens to the light that travels to the brain after a person has a form of brain degeneration? Okay,
after a form of brain degeneration? Okay, that I'm not necessarily understanding that question. So can you repeat that question one more time?
I can repeat that. So it says, what happens to the light that travels to the brain after a person has had a form of brain degeneration?
After that person has had a form of brain? Okay, so first of all, you have to find out, does that person, when you deal with a degeneration of the brain, you're dealing with the person's genetics. Okay, so Yanun has explained to us that, like the Caucasian race, they had a defect in their genes due to the leprosy that was inside of them. So in that particular case, their brains have been to a degenerated state. But that's not in relationship to, for instance, an African, an Asian, an Indian, or an Aborigine, where our brains naturally do not have that genetic defect because none of those races had the curse of leprosy put inside of their genes. So when you talk about the light or that spark, you're dealing with in terms of when a person ejaculates or has that type of experience, there is energy that is being excreted. There is energy that is being depleted from the person. Okay, on a chemical level, you're dealing with oxytocin, you're dealing with prolactin, but you have to understand the lust forces is what weakens the blood flow to the brain. So when a person has sex or has that sexual encounter, their life force has been depleted to a certain extent. Yes. Okay, are there any more questions?
Not at this moment. Feel free to ask your questions, family. Any questions?
Okay, so I'm going to read this one part since there's no questions. So it says here, yet you Negroids, Africans, world over, must rebuild your brain powers and reprogram your own mind from our own mental reservoir, your own older souls. It started with knowing the facts about what and who you are and what you can or are capable of doing. Just as you are able to keloid, your skin, unlike others, will extend itself or regenerate itself. Hey, how you doing? Y'all come in. Yeah. All right, so I'm going to read a little bit more, okay, because we have some more people coming in. Okay, so I'm going to read a little bit on this part here. There are many things unique about the African race. So it is with your brain regrowth. Your brain is not limited to the neurons it is born with, or even the neurons that fill it after the explosion of brain development in childhood. New neurons are born well into the 9th decade of life. So you have to understand, through exercise, there's 5 things. There's 5 things in our way of life that will help you, that will assist you in cleansing yourself inside out and outside in. So number 1, you have proper relaxation, proper breathing, proper diet with much water, proper positive thinking, okay, and proper exercise. All right, those are practical ways of rebuilding your brain. So it says here, within your brain, there exists a population of neural stem cells that are continually replenished and differentiate into brain neurons. The powers of transformation. So you have the power to transform yourself, and you have the power to transform your brain based off of the activities that you do. Okay. Are there any questions before we go on?
Yes, we have a question from Sanja Nesbitt.
Okay.
It says, Raul Bazama, what if you are studying and don't fully understand everything sometimes? Will that continue to break the spell in us?
Yeah, yes. You have to understand that in Patadak, the age of the Adamites, Bobby Anun, Dr. Malachi York has said to read, teach, teach, teach. So by you reading the doctrine, it will assist you in breaking the spell. Okay, and that's why we have question and answer classes, so that we have student teachers of the master teacher to answer the questions that people have read in the books. Because this knowledge is supposed to go out to people who are the students, who are the ones that Bobby Anun was looking for. When you read that class, or when you listen to that class called Who and What Are You? That's a class that you can go to. It's called Who and What Are You? It's an older class that Bobby Anun explained how he came here for his students. And he is our warner for our entire Negroid race. For our African race, Bobby Anun is sent to give us the next 24,000-year cycle. Okay, so he is a healer. He is the guide. He is the warner. He is the informer. He is the one that is the healing in his wings. When they talk about in Malachi 4 verse 2, when they said the Son of Righteousness has the healing in its wings, that is Baba Yanun. That is Dr. Malachi York, who is coming with this right knowledge that is healing our race of people. This is the cure. This is the medicine that we need to heal ourselves inside out and outside in. So take your time. And you can go through the books, and the more you read, the more you'll begin to understand.
All right. So we have a question from Eric Jones. His question is, does the etheric core consist of the ultraviolet cosmic rays that send thought waves to the mind that connect to your brain?
Okay.
You like, I can repeat
that question.
Okay.
I'm a little bit confused with that.
All right, so it says, does the etheric core consist of ultraviolet cosmic rays that send thought waves to the mind that connect to the brain?
Okay, so now as far as the what you're talking about is relating to Patadak prism. When you go into Patadak prism, there is a topic or a verse that talks about the ultraviolet rays being the highest frequency that works on top of matter. Okay, but when you're dealing with the etheric core, the description of it, we have never really received the description of the etheric core. Okay, so we've understood by way of that Patadak prism that violet being the fastest frequency is dealing with certain colors and beams and rays of light. Okay, so when you deal with those rays of light, those things are having an effect on the brain. They're having an effect on a person's body. The same way when you look at TV or the media, you see tons of colors being projected and shot at you at different speeds. It's the same way violet that moves on the highest frequency has an ability to affect matter, has an ability to affect physical things. Okay? Now the etheric core, when you go to another book called Patadak Concentration, is dealing with the vehicle in which your ancestors can communicate to you mind to mind.
Okay, all right. We have a question from another question from Silos Congas. He asks, after the master and healer has done his job in setting your soul and spirit right, what's next?
Say that one more question. I'm trying to understand that.
He asks, after the master and healer has done his job in setting your soul and spirit right, what's next?
Well, that is really up to you. So when you say after, you have to repeat that question, because it's almost like asking in terms of can he heal you? Bobby Anun has the ability, by way of right knowledge, to heal the soul, to restore a soul for someone who has lost it.
I'll ask.
So when you say, has he done his job, Bobby Anun has completed his purpose in giving us right knowledge.
I'll repeat it one more time. So
Okay,
the question says, after the master and healer has done his job in setting your soul and spirit right, what's next?
Well, it deals with your matrix, because you have to understand that Baba Yanun has incarnated to give us right knowledge in order for our race to become supreme beings. So there is no limit. You have to go back to a Master Secrets. I can't think of the name right now, but there's a Master Secrets where Baba Yanun explains that he is transforming us into deities, or what you call beings that are 720. All right, 720 degrees simply means when you look at a circle has 360 degrees, right? So the physical world is consisted of that 360 degrees, and another 360 is dealing with the circle of the spiritual world. So when you put 360 plus 360 together, that's what? 720 degrees. A person who is a master of heaven, the spiritual world, 360, and a master of earth, the physical world, which is also another 360. So you have to understand that Baba Yanun is turning us or transforming us into gods. Yet it is, when we say that word God, we tend to put a religious concept on it and start to attribute, okay, that means becoming the creator. That means, the supreme being. All of us as Africans, as Negroids, are supreme beings. But we have to wake up to the consciousness that you are a God insofar as you are responsible for your actions, your deeds, and your intentions, and the things that you think of. Okay? So in understanding that, it means that you do not place the blame, or you don't shift the responsibility to an unseen force. So in other words, what people will do is they'll say, oh, well, I'm having a good day, and they'll praise God. Or if they're having a bad day, they blame the devil.
That's right.
But both of them, they've given a male attribute to it, right? Because the God and the devil is being both, confined or defined as being a male force, but an unseen male force at that. So it's a spook, so it's like a ghost. But at the same time, they're not taking accountable as the God of their own being to respond to the problems that they have of themselves, and to also respawn in terms of having the ability to generate a positive outcome. Okay, so now Baba Yanun is teaching us how to become a deity. That deals with right knowledge. That deals with study. That deals with meditating. That deals with chanting and coming back to your own ancestors. Baba said that we have to become our own exorcists. Meaning all the negative things, all the negative issues that we have inside of ourselves, we have to take the responsibility of healing our own selves. So Baba Yanun is our savior, meaning that he's giving us access to the truth, and we have to utilize that truth. We have to use that truth to free ourselves. So when they say, when it deals with the truth and it shall set you free, it's not set you free, it will make you free. So this right knowledge is the truth that will make you free once you apply it. So you are responsible for your own well-being and your own inner being. Okay, so we'll go for about 2 or 3 more questions, and then we'll turn the class off.
All right, so just to wrap it up, Karen Butler just asked briefly, sorry I'm late, but what is the etheric cord?
Okay, so when you deal with the etheric cord, it's simply the cord that connects you to what you call the mental reservoir. So to make it a little bit easier, the etheric cord is what your ancestors communicate to you by way of that cord. Okay, so from the previous, what we were talking about previously was talking about how a mother and a child has an umbilical cord. Okay, so the child is connected to the child. The child is connected to the mother insofar as the nourishment, receiving the life, the essence, the proteins. When the mother is eating, the child is also eating also at the same time. The same way, your mind feeds off of a mental reservoir. You guys have to understand that your mind feeds off of a mental reservoir where you're receiving thoughts. So what religion has done through the spell of Christianity, through the spell of Islam, through the spell of Judaism, that religion has clipped us from our own ancestors' guidance, from our own ancestors' communication and the connection and the link. So that what they say is, they'll talk about a leap of faith. And that leap of faith is where you've leaped over the generations of your ancestors and you've leaped to Jesus, or you've leaped to Muhammad, or you've leaped to Allah, or you've leaped to a God, or you've leaped to Yahweh or Jehovah, but you have ignored your own ancestors that are connected to your own self, your own inner being. So the etheric cord is that connection, okay? And this is in the actual facts when we talk about emotional energy. It's talked about in Feeding the Forces. It's talked about in a lot of the books that Bobby Anu has wrote. So Patarak, which is the word for the way, or Pa Mitra, called the way, or the Master's Secrets, or the actual facts. All of these scrolls are the hereafter doctrine. The hereafter doctrine is the doctrine for the next 24,000-year cycle. Only the Master Teacher, Bobby Anu, has the keys to the next 24,000 years.
All right, so we have a question again from Elijah Davis.
Okay.
He asks, when you see the deceased in dreams, are they really there? Or is it your mind just making things up?
It depends. And it depends upon the mind's eye. When you go to a Potsdam called the mind's eye, Bobby Anu explained that when you receive light, and the best way to explain this is dealing with understanding the science of the retina. Okay, so let's just go to this real quick. When you deal with the retina, right? Just break down that. So when we deal with the eye itself, the retina is the net. When you hear the word ret in Latin, it means net. So your eye has an entrapping device that absorbs light when you look at things. So when images are being directed towards you, the eye absorbs it. It's stored in your subconscious, and then you dream it out. So certain things that you see on the TV, certain things that you see on the cinema, plays, newspapers, whatever your eye sees is what's being stored in the cells of your body. And what you do is you dream it out. So it's the same thing if you see a movie or a scary movie, all the different characters, all the images, all the sounds and emotions and things that are being projected towards you, the things that you're experiencing, all of that is going inside of your cells. You go home, you go to sleep, and then what happens is the dream is being manifested in terms of the images that was just projected to you. So now that just deals with the mind's eye. Going back to that class again, where Bobby Anu and Dr. Malachi York talks about who knows the secrets, you have to understand that sometimes what you dream is within a 72-hour period. So in Wu Sabat, we make the link to our ancestors so you can get confirmation when it comes down to what you've experienced in dreams or what you're experiencing right now, as in the waking world. We're trying to make a connection to our ancestors now. We're not trying to believe that they exist because we already know that they exist because you're here. You're here by way of your DNA.
All right. So we have a question from Christopher Comrie. He says, Raul Bazamal, can you discuss what Baba Yanun refers to as our zero time reference?
Okay, so now the zero time reference is dealing with the time of your birth. The book that you have to go to is called Patarak, Dimensional Shift. So your zero time reference deals with at the moment of your birth. That's when everything starts or begins for you in this life cycle. For this physical life cycle, your zero time reference is the time of your birth and what proceeds afterwards.
Okay.
Okay, we'll take 2 more questions and then we'll go ahead.
Karen Butler asks, what kind of language are you speaking? Is it Medu Netter?
Okay, so now when you say Medu Netter, right, the word Medu Netter simply means Medu, which means Madat, or word, or Netter means nature, where you get the word Nathar. We say Nathar. Netter is the incorrect way that they had it spelled. So when you break down that word Medu Netter, you're dealing with the hieroglyphics, or in our language we call it the Safafat, or Safaf. Sometimes you see the word spelled as Suf, the Suf script. So the hieroglyphics is not dealing with the spoken language. The hieroglyphics is dealing with pictorial stories that talk about our past, that talk about what we did back in ancient times. So now Bobby Yanun has given us our own language called Misbatia or Sabbatic, or the Sabian language. The Sabian language was thought to be extinct at one point in time, but this was our own ancient Egyptian language that was brought to us and reintroduced to us by the Queen of Sheba. The Queen of Sheba, if you've heard that name before, you hear the word Sheba, Sabba, Sabat, Sabbatic, Misbatia. The Queen of Sheba in ancient Egypt was the pharaoh Queen Hatshepsut, or Queen Hatshepsutuk. She was the one who reintroduced the Sabaean or the Sabian tongue to us and restored our tongue, our mother tongue, that has existed for over 54,000 years ago. So you have to understand that women spoke first, then thousands of years later, they taught men to speak and how to articulate words. And then throughout time, other races of people who have come into our cultures and into our doctrine have mispronunciated or mispronounced the words, and then those words became dialects in different tongues.
Okay.
Because Africans have existed on the planet for millions of years, and we predate all other races, we're the mothers and fathers, so therefore we're the first to speak it. So we have the mother tongue. So Misbatia is our own ancient language that has been restored to us. The original language that was first brought to the Sans people, the Bushmen, the Kalahari Bushmen of South Africa. Okay, now with that being said, towel hat for everybody for coming out to this question and answer class. If you have more questions, please feel free to type it into the comments and we will reconvene at another time. Until then, wadu.